What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Epic 7 video. I think there's a lot of controversy going around, but this video specifically is just for the honest review of Ocean Breeze Luluca, aka Summer Luluca. I'm going to talk about my thoughts on her, playing her specifically for real-time arena. You know, our typical review stuff, talk about the stats, builds, artifact selection. Now, guys, I'm going to also venture into things like imprints and how many copies you need to pull or want to pull, and that's going to lead into some drama because there's some stuff going on in terms of the side story and how Luluca interacts with the side story. People are very upset, and for good reason, or at least it's justified, and so I'm going to make a separate video. It'll be up by the time y'all watch this, I assume, so either pause, check that out first. Please don't, in this video, talk about that kind of negative part of the game. I will address it. I don't think it's a good thing, but this one specifically is just to review Luluca herself. All right, so let's keep those separate. I'll make a separate topic video covering the drama. All right, let's break down our review. All right, guys, real fast. You already know I'm going to ask, how did your summon luck go? Today on stream, I went full pity, 120 summons to get one Luluca and one off-banner artifact, guys. That's right. I didn't pull any artifacts. Now, luckily, I did do one extra 10 pull. Come on! Wait, that's good, right? If it's an off-banner arty, I might just alt F4. Or better yet, we play, what's... And I ended up getting another off-banner artifact, but at the same time, pulled a second Luluca. So, 2 Lulucas, plus I was able to have a blue Luluca spare. I got her at A rank imprint, which is going to be important for the side story stuff, which we'll cover in another video. And then I'll talk about summons, how many imprints you need for Luluca at the end of this video on top of that. But overall, I think it's time, guys. 1, let me know how your luck went. If you pitied like me, my heart goes out to you. 2, once again, anytime you can get feedback, boys, try to let Smilegate know. It'd be nice if for limited banners, we only get the limited artifact, because it's just getting rougher and rougher, I think, pulling all this other stuff. And now if they want us to get multiple copies of Luluca on top of that, it's kind of crazy. All right, but let's move on to the stat breakdown. All right, guys, let's quickly talk about the build that I was using today for real-time arena. Remember, this is all my builds are usually focused on RTA. You'll get away with a lot less in arena and Guild Wars, but I think for the most part, it's a similar build throughout. So whatever PvP you're doing, that's the important part. She's not a PvE hero, which I'll cover later. She's not a PvE hero unless you need those imprints for the whale side story. But remember, watch that other video. Let's talk about the stats. So as you can see here, guys, very basic speed set plus effect resist set. I think that's going to be the best overall, because it just gives free boost in terms of stat gain. And I'll show my equipment here real fast. You don't need giga speed, though. I do have 20 on this weapon. But overall, I'm trying to hit that 240 to 250 speed threshold. If you can get 250, even better. And I'll explain why here in just a second. But 240 to 250 speed, I think, is a nice starting point, if you guys can get that. You guys that are newer, that don't have crazy gear yet, might need to sacrifice a little bit on either defense and health or effect resist. But I think speed tuning to this point is nice, and I'll tell you why. So the reason I'm picking out the 240 speed, I'm sure by now we're all fairly familiar with the skills. I might talk more about this in a second, but the long story short, we want to bring her into non-attack skill units, right, guys? And then we'll get some crazy combat readiness push via the skill 2 and potentially the artifact passive as well if you're using this. The problem is if your opponent decides to hold their skills, which is very common in real-time arena. Remember, in Guild Wars and arena, the AI has to use their skills. And RTA, there's a person behind it, so sometimes they'll hold it to not give you that free S2 proc, yeah? So if they're holding their skills, we want to be in a position to hopefully put up the increased defense as well as the ice cream buff and then set up later for the skill 2. Remember, we can do this in reverse order, so it's kind of nice. It doesn't have to be, right, they activate this first. Later on, eventually, this will proc later in the match. But the main thing is to get that defense up in a timely order as well as the ice cream buff so that we have Luluca value, because your opponents will, I promise you, hold their skills in a lot of situations. So that's kind of what the 240 to 250 speed range is. And on top of that too, if you guys can hit the 250 speed range, you're going to be able to use this into units like Ahmed on top of that when they do decide to use their skills, because the combat readiness will be enough despite her having some insane combat readiness push of her own. So that's kind of where I like to speed, guys. But you know, if y'all are planning to use this mostly Guild Wars Arena, or if you're expecting your opponents to always press their skills, then of course, guys, you can get away with way less speed, probably like 220. I just like to be higher because I inevitably know our opponents are going to not press buttons, non-attack skills, and she will not get her push and maybe not get a turn at all. Right, so that's the theory behind that. And then, of course, the bulk on top of it is because she will get focused down, so you may want to make sure she's not super squishy. And then F-Res, I think, guys, is going to be important as well, unfortunately. It's going to be hard to get this many stats, but you got to do what you got to do. Just try your best, and you'll have to lower things depending on your gear quality. But effect resist is important too. For example, we want to be able to try and resist certain units, like maybe Zeo, for example. But truthfully, guys, the higher ranks you go, if your opponent wants to debuff you with a unit like Zeo, they're going to have 200 plus effectiveness at the minimum. And so even 230 here for me is not going to cover it, right? But for a majority of the field, we assume they don't have crazy effectiveness. And so we want to make sure that she's able to get into that skill 3, skill 2 unharassed. Yeah, so ultimately, the effect resist is up to taste. The speed is up to taste. Just make sure she has bulk as well. But those are the main stats we focus on, obviously. There was some people asking about counter set, which I think maybe has some potential, especially when our opponents hold skills. Then you can also combo with fun things like Celestine. But right now, guys, for myself, and I think a lot of y'all watching, just always go for the sets that give a lot of stats, especially the newer you are. That's just going to make your life a lot easier. So speed set plus effect resist set. Brain dead easy to just gear up. Just try to make the best of what you have here. You can also go immunity for certain comp situations, but I don't think she necessarily needs it. And you also lose out on free 20% FRES on top of that too, right? So counter set, maybe I'll test later. If you guys are testing it, let me know how that works. And yeah, from there, let's go ahead and talk about skill enhancements. So skill enhancements, we opted for a 571 plus 13. Now this is going to be the maximum you want to put, because she doesn't need the extra +2 here. So plus 13 is the max you'll ever go. And if you guys need to skimp on more, let's say you're short on Catalyst or Mola Gora, then guys, you cut out the skill 1 completely, as the most important part of her kit is front loading, right? The skill 3 and then the skill 2 follow-up. Whereas the skill 1 is just extra CR whenever she skill 1s, or if you decide to soul burn for the entire team. So this isn't nearly as important. I just did it because I plan to use her a lot. So you can cut that out, and then if you want, you can skimp a little bit on skill 2. Skill 3, I would try not to. I think this is important to have because there are going to be some matches that could be very important where we cycle back into this, as this makes it -1 turn cooldown. And remember, she also has -1 turn cooldown on the skill 2 as well. So she can cycle if she doesn't end up dying too quickly. Overall, though, you can skimp quite a bit on Mola, as she is a soul weaver, so it's kind of nice, not too whale heavy. Now, last but not least, guys, the artifact selection. I'm rocking the Soul Constellation because I like the combat readiness and I like the massive amount of effect resist topped onto it. So I think it's important to pick up 1 copy of this artifact, but we'll cover summoning stuff at the very end here, how many copies of each, the unit and the artifact. Other choices y'all can rock, though, guys. There's a lot of different options here. I do think for now, if you guys don't know what you want for specifically your composition, just rock the Soul Constellation. Remember, you can buy it with powder, guys, if you're unlucky. Like me. And then, like I mentioned, Celestine counter maybe potential. I wouldn't try that just yet. I think things like Touch of Rakos maybe could be good. You also have Guardian Ice Crystals if y'all were playing during the Amelia banner. This is a great one too. This provides some extra healing, which, remember, she doesn't have healing outside of Ice Cream. This will also give FRES and will give you some nice single target healing on top of it. So for now, just stick with her own arty, but I want to encourage you guys to try out different artifacts like Touch of Rakos, like Guardian, Ice Crystals, maybe even like Potion Vial. Doctor's Bag I don't think is good enough because she already has the cleanse on the skill 2 initially, and it has that 3-turn max per turn sort of effect. But definitely try out different artifact slots. And just use Soul Constellation if you can't think of anything better. Okay, so final thoughts, guys, on the Luluca honest review. She's a very good unit for PvP, and that's the key word here. If you're more of a PvE player, and we're not talking about the side story, guys, remember, check out the other video for that. If we're just talking about Luluca alone, not giving her massive buffs for the side story, then as a PvE unit, she's not the best, right? There's other Soul Weavers that will provide sustain, that'll just be better for general purpose play, and so she's more of a PvP centric unit. That being said, still pick her up because she's limited, and at a bonus point, if you do play her, or if you do play PvP, she's very, very nice, guys. I think these kind of units are nice for the game, as they'll slow down the tempo. They'll help provide some survival, either from our opponents holding skills, either from providing that defense up and Ice Cream, or debilitating our opponents with that combat readiness push up into the blind, into the attack break. Or sorry, blind plus the silence, excuse me. But overall, I think she's a nice unit. Definitely pick up 1 copy of her. Pick up 1 copy of her artifact. The nice thing on the artifact too is it's not super whale mode. So besides getting extra resources in the side story summons, even at +15, this is nice. Unlike units or artifacts like Benimaru's Tachi, which is like +30, or you might just lose the game. Overall, this works fine at +15, and Luluca works fine with no imprints as well. That being said, imprints are very nice because of how Smilegate operated or created this side story system, and I have a lot to say about that. So for the last time, please check out that video. Beyond this is just the review for Luluca herself. I have a lot to say on the side story, so check that out after, guys. But for just Luluca, pick her up because she's good. Pick her up because she's limited. No need to whale out too many copies for her if we take out the side story drama equation. That being said, I think we'll wrap things up here. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Enjoy your Lulucas and driving people over with trucks. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out, guys.